We're studying now the case of Lina al Gabi Akevesh, which is the last paragraph on page Yud Tes. And he begins his discussion by quoting a Tosfos in Masechta Yoma, in this case, that the Kevesh has the same status as Rosh Shel Mizbeach. And therefore we mentioned that there's a machlokas about Lina al Rosh Shel Mizbeach, and we came to the conclusion that there's no Lina al Rosh Shel Mizbeach, and that we saw here in footnote Shin Ayin Hey, where Rava says Ein Lina Poseles Berosh Shel Mizbeach. Rab, I'm sorry. And it seems that Rashi, the Minchas Chinuch, and others came to the conclusion that, just one second, let me just get the Shittas again. It would seem from Rashi that Ein Lina Poseles Berosh Shel Mizbeach like Rabbah, and now we're saying that the Kevesh has the identical status as Rosh Shel Mizbeach, and therefore it doesn't lend itself to a psul of Lina. However, although that's the way we saw it in Tosfos, that Kevesh also protects the Basar HaZevach from psul Lina, and it has the status of Rosh Shel Mizbeach, and according to that Mandi Omer, there's no psul Lina. However, as we turn to Chaf, he says that we may have to divide up the Kevesh into two parts. If I remember correctly, the Kevesh was 32 amas long. He says, Yesh Misha Kosav, that maybe Kavanas HaTosfos is rak lechelik shu michetzi hamizbech ulamala. It means, let's say, I guess we're talking about over 16 amas into the Kevesh. So it's more than halfway up the Kevesh. Now I'm assuming we're talking about the length. I mean, the width of the Kevesh, I believe, was only 16 amas. So, but I think he's talking about the length. In the note here, you'll see he says, Shinpei, that ein chiluk mekomos bekevesh, that we don't find any halachic distinction between one part of the kevesh and the other. The kol hakevesh dino echadhu. And if that be the case, then this whole suffix that maybe we're only talking about the second half of the kevesh, that doesn't make any sense. So if Tosfos is saying that there's no psul Lina in the case of kevesh, then he means the entire kevesh, anywhere in the kevesh. Now, in my mind, it's not exactly clear how this happened that Basar HaZevach got left on the kevesh. I don't know, overnight, or I don't know how that happened exactly. ובמקדש דוד נוקה רק בחלק הכבש מחצי המזבח למעלה. I'm just going to take a stab at it. I didn't see the Mikdash David. But maybe what he means is, you remember that we had an equation between dam and basar, that just like dam needs zrika, so too basar needs zrika. In other words, it's not that the Kohen climbs up the kevesh and he places the basar azevach on top of the maracha, but rather he throws the basar on top of the maracha. Now, I don't know, you have to work out the average size and height and so forth and so on, but it could be that only on the top half of the kevesh does the Kohen have a shot at a swish, what we used to call it, of getting the basar onto the marach. And if that be the case, then that's called Rosh Hashanah Mizbeach. I mean, the whole idea of Rosh Hashanah Mizbeach is that you're in such close proximity to the maracha that we could already consider it kaviyachal as if the basar is on the fire, which we said that once the haktarah process begins, there's no psulina. Now we're moving backwards and we're saying, well, he didn't put the basar on the maracha, but on the other hand, it's on Rosh Hashanah Mizbeach, which means it's just a matter of throwing it onto the maracha and be Mekayim Haktarah. So therefore, it's already the Aschalas Haktarah, and there's no psul of lina. So now we could say that if the Kohen is holding on to the basar and he's climbing the kevesh, he's gotten to the point on the kevesh where he can take a shot at the marach. I don't know. Just to try to explain the Mikdash stuff. Yesh misha kasav sherak chelik hakevesh min hasovev ulamala ein lina poseles bo. So this is the Yavitz, he says. Rav Yaakov Emdi. Min hasovev ulamala. Now the question is, where is the sovev? Does anybody have maybe a diagram here? Let me just see if by chance. So let's assume, again, I have to check this out from what we learned in Masechta Yoma, but let's assume that you climb up 5 amos from the Yesod until you get to the Sovev, right? The Yesod itself was 1 amma in height. And then you built the Mizbeach, which was 28 amos square, right? The Yesod was 32 amos square, but now from the ground, the Ritzvah Hazorah until the Sovev is 6 amma. Again, Beiravon Mugbal. So the Sovev is 6 amma high. Now we said that if you want to equate the kevesh with the Rosh HaMizbeach, we're talking the Chetzi Lamala. So let's assume that from the top of the base until the Rosh HaMizbeach is 9 amma. Correct? Because from the ground until the Rosh HaMizbeach is 10 amma. So if we have 9 amma, so let's say, but the kevesh, it's confusing to me because the kevesh is on an incline. Just 1 second. In other words, what I'm suggesting is that if you would draw a straight line from the we're talking about the Sovev, am I right? Yeah, from the Sovev, if you were to draw a straight line to the Kevesh, and the Sovev is 6 amma above ground, where would you be on the Kevesh, which is 32 amma in length? I suspect you'd be on the lower half of the kevesh, no? Does that make sense to you?
No, the Sovev is going to meet up with the end of the kevesh because it goes all the way up to the Mizbeach, and that's where the Sovev is at the edge of the Mizbeach.
No, I don't know what you mean. The Sovev is a ledge where the Kohanim would walk around this ledge to circle the Mizbeach. Correct? So the Kohen, right. Let's say the Kohen is, what shall we say, 4 amos high. I don't know what's the average height of a person. So he's already 6 amos, his feet are 6 amos above the ground, and he's going to reach the Rosh HaMizbeach, which let's say is 10 amos above the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
While he's walking around the Sovet. Now, where on the Kevesh would you meet up with the feet of the Kohen?
Oh, the feet.
The feet of the Kohen. Why? Because we're talking about, he put the Basar Kodesh on the Yisod. And the Yavitz is saying that when he places it down on the Yisod, then it's like Rosh HaMizbeach and there's no Psul Lina. So I'm just wondering, is that on the lower half of the Kevesh or on the top half of the Kevesh? It's, let's say, 16 amma, but now we're going on an incline, so we're not going, vertical with a straight line from the ground. So I'm sure there's a mathematical formula for this. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah. If the angle of the kevesh is about 30 degrees, then he'd be about halfway up. I'm not sure if it's 30 degrees, but if it is, because if it's 30 degrees, the incline and the height, the incline is twice the length of the height.
So you take 6 and multiply it by 2? If the Yisod is 6 amos in height, the floor of the Yisod,
Right, so then you'd be talking about, at that point, you'd say you'd be at 12 amos along the kevesh.
So in that sense, if that's true, I'm just thinking out loud, it could be that the Yavitz is a mekil, right? Because he's trying to prevent the psul of Lina, and he's already willing to do that at a height which is less than halfway up the kevesh, if the kevesh is 32 amos inland. All right. Now, what about the Yisod itself? The Yisod is 1 amma above the ground, and he put the Basar Kodesh, I don't know why he left it on the Yisod. The Yisod is only on the north and south side, not on the east and west side. But let's say 1 amma on the east side, but he left it on the southern side, on the Yisod. Again, I can't imagine why that would happen, but that's what happened. And he says that Lina Mo'eles b'Yisod l'kuli alma. And I'm tempted to think that we're at a crossroads here. Either we're saying that the Yisod is not part of the Mizbeach, which I'm afraid to take that leap of faith, because we have Shvicha Shirayim, which according to one opinion is Ma'akev in Karbonos, and it's on the Yisod. So to say that the Yisod, which is subject to Shvicha Shirayim, is not part of the Mizbeach. I mean, that's unacceptable in my mind. But what you could say is that the Yesod is totally passive, so to speak. Meaning, the Yesod does not project you towards the Rosh HaMizbeach. You could talk about the Sovev, where the Kohen is standing with access. You can talk about the Rosh HaMizbeach for sure, but even the Sovev perhaps, and maybe even the top half, or the Kolshim, the top half of the Kevesh, perhaps. But talk about the Yesod. I mean, nobody even walks around the Yesod. And I'm not telling you, the Yesod is a basic part of the Mizbeach. It's called, I think it's called in the Torah's language, Yerech HaMizbeach, if I remember correctly. And that is critical. Well, maybe it's called Yesod HaMizbeach. What is it called? Just 1 second. In the Torah's language. Yeah, in the Torah's language, it's called Yesod HaMizbeach, actually. Yerech HaMizbeach is Yerech HaMizbeach is what is Yerech HaMizbeach? Yerech HaMizbeach I'm not sure. Just 1 second. We have Karnos HaMizbeach, we have Yesod HaMizbeach, and then the Torah says Ribua Yeh HaMizbeach, and then we have the Kevesh. Where's the Kevesh appear in the Torah? It says El Pnei HaMizbeach. El Pnei HaMizbeach. That's the panim. That you get up to the Mizbeach. That's the Kevesh. So there's no question that the Yesod is critical. There's no Mizbeach without a Yesod. And the Yesod was 32 Amma square, but it only went up 1 Amma. So that's what I'm saying. The Yesod on the one hand is fundamental to the Mizbeach. Without it, there ain't no Mizbeach. It's not Mechaper. It's not effective in Korbanos. The whole Mizbeach is possible without a Yesod. But nevertheless, as far as protecting and preventing Sulina is concerned, the Yesod is not part of the process, or at least the active process of Hakrovas HaKorban. And Lina is the exact opposite of Hakrova. All right, so that's what we have here. Lina b'mizbeach hapnimi. Now, again, I don't have the wherewithal to analyze this. I mean, why should the mizbeach hapnimi be any different in terms of Lina than the mizbeach hachitzon? So he quotes here a sefer called Siach. I don't know. It's got a whole series of Torah's Kodesh. I'm not familiar with this literature, but basically he says that even if you hold Ein Lina Poselis Beroshel Shel Mizbeach, that's only on the Mizbeach HaChitzon, but not on the Mizbeach HaPnimi. Come on, Rabosa. We should be able to figure this out. We've been learning enough of the Sakdom to Kodshim that we should be able to figure this out. All right. I'm going to have to. I have to do a little bit more research on this. I suspect it has something to do with the function of the Mizbeach HaPnimi as opposed to the Mizbeach HaChitzoni. And we have Matan Domim of Chatos Pnimius on the Mizbeach HaPnimi. And then we have the Gecholim. Remember, we spoke about Chitui Gecholim. I mean, in Param and Israfim, I mean, the Sreifa takes place outside of the Migdash. I don't know. You know, the trouble with this Hakdom is that he whets your appetite, but it's mostly like almost what should I say, a collection of sources, but you're meant to do the research on your own. Hela emurim lemizbeach bizman she'eino roy l'Torah. You know, you could talk about the Mizbeach preventing a psulina when there's a meaningful relationship between the basar carbon and the Mizbeach. But if he puts the basar onto the Mizbeach in a time period where there's no Aktara, so it's just a matter of coincidence, if you will, as far as the relationship between the basar and the Mizbeach, that the basar is on top of the Mizbeach. So for all intents and purposes, the basar is really not on the Mizbeach. The basar is considered connected to the Mizbeach and protected by the Mizbeach and warding off Lina. In a case where there's a relationship between the basar and the Mizbeach, the basar belongs on the Mizbeach because there's going to be Aktara on the Mizbeach. Or do we say no? That the Mizbeach is a Mizbeach, and the basar is on the Mizbeach, and there's a separate halacha that Mizbeach protects and prevents Lina. Okay, we go on to a new topic now. And this is the psul of Yotze. Yotze means that every carbon has its mechitzos, and if you take it out of the mechitzos, it's possible midin Yotze. Basar chatos, dino le'ochel bazora. So the avoda, or shall we call it the mitzvah of achilas basar chatos, is within the confines and the mechitzas of the azara. He now took the basar outside of the mechitzas of the azara. Nifsal biyotze. And what's the source for the psul of yotze? It says ubasar basada treifa lo tochelu. And treifa is called chutz l'mechitzasa. What does that mean? The Torah says that you can shecht an animal, we're talking about chulin now, because the animal is a viable being. It has its inner parts intact, inner organs, etc. Once it becomes a treifa, there's no shchita. Shchita cannot be effective on a treifa. And that means that the treifa is chutz l'mechitza as far as shchita is concerned. Now, I'm not sure why, but we can establish an analogy between the basar of a treifa, which is chutz l'mechitzaso, and therefore the Torah prohibits you from eating it, and the basar of a carbon that goes outside of its mechitza. So in the case of treifa, the animal is outside the mechitza of shchita, and the case that we're talking about in Kodshim is where the Kodshim, let's say basar chatas, left the confines of the azar. It's outside of the mechitza of achila. Now we have another drasha from a pasuk of Vayikra Yud. It says, "Hein lo huva es dama el hakodesh pnima." So this is in the parsha of Misas Nadav Avihu, and Moshe Rabbeinu was asking, perhaps the chatos was not taken pnima. Hainu sheyatza chutz l'mechitzasa. Ulefichach nisrafa. Now I have to figure out, Moshe and Aaron having a dialogue here. I'm trying to figure out, if I remember correctly, it was Moshe who believed that it was not Ton Streifa. So we'd have to open up the psukim here and go through it all. In footnote number Shin Pei Dalid, he quotes Rashi and Zvachim that the problem was Yitzias HaBasar Chutzim Chitzasa. That's why they burnt the basar. But Tosas has a different shita. Yalfina mi'achol tochlu osa ba'kodesh. Sheheshiv Aaron l'she'elas Moshe Rabbeinu. What is ba'kodesh? Shelo yatsa chutz l'kodesh. So Moshe says, "Madua lo achaltem es hachatos b'mokom hakodesh." So why did Moshe Rabbeinu have to add those two words, b'mokom hakodesh? I mean, obviously, it goes without saying that if Moshe is criticizing Aaron Ubanov for not eating the chatos that was brought by the late two brothers, Nadav and Avihu, that he was talking about why didn't you eat it from Makom Kodesh? I mean, we eat Basar Kodesh in Makom Kodesh. V'chi chutz l'kodesh nechla, halo nisrfa. Is lama nemar lo achaltem omalahem shema chutz l'kloim yotzasa. So Moshe Rabbeinu is asking Aaron, what justification do you have for not eating the basar of the chatas? Did it go chutz l'mechitzasa? Was it taken out of the azara? And that's indicated by the words b'makom kodesh. Are you telling me that it was taken out of the makom kodesh, which it was not? So we're going to have to find a different justification for why they didn't eat the basar of the chatas. But certainly, Moshe Rabbeinu was excluding a havamina that may be the reason why you're not eating the chata, the basar chatas, but rather you're burning it, is because it left the mechitza and it was taken out of the azara. We see clearly that yitzia michutz azara is a posel. Okay, then, so that's where it was. So that's, shall we say, an introduction to the sugya of the psul yotz.